Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm Kevin Corson, PCI's Executive Director. On behalf of PCI, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Bringing Powder Coating In-House, presented by Mark Friels of Global Finishing Solutions. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone that all attendees are on mute, so if you have any questions along the way, please type them in the questions panel. The speakers will address the questions at the end of the webinar. If we run out of time, you will have the opportunity to connect with him through email after the webinar. His contact information will be noted at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available through the PCI store within 2 business days. All attendees will receive a brief survey after the webinar. Please take a few moments and reply to the survey. We appreciate your feedback as PCI continues to develop new programs to offer different topics and training you need. Now, I'd like to introduce the presenter for today's webinar. Mark is a territory manager for Global Finishing Solutions with more than 35 years of paint application system experience. During the past 9 years with GFS, Mark has established long-term relationships with customers and partners while ensuring their needs are met for the betterment of their businesses. In addition to his sales experience, Mark holds a mechanical design certification from Indiana Tech. Mark, thank you for being here today. I will now turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for the nice introduction, Kevin. Thank you, PCI, Kevin and Kelly, for inviting us to participate in this. As Kevin said, I'm a territory manager for a company called Global Finishing Solutions. I work mostly with distributors, doing wet paint and powder, and been doing this for a long time, since the 80s or so. So we're going to try to talk a little bit about bringing powder in-house. Some of the highs and lows of doing that, and hopefully we can give you a little script, a little advice, a little help on what it takes to accomplish that. So let me see if I can move my PowerPoint. Well, guys, I know we just tested this 10 minutes ago. There we go. Did the PowerPoint move?
Yes, you're good.
Kevin, you're seeing agenda? Okay. First electrical snafu. All right. So very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is sort of walk through the advantages and maybe some things to watch out for of bringing this in-house, and then the equipment needed, considerations whenever you do that, and then the importance of selecting the right partner to do these things. So we're going to sort of walk through this, ABC, to try to show you what we see in our experience that metal fabricators deal with when going through this process. So why do companies do this? Our experience has been, obviously, the first thing they do it for is to reduce cost. That's an easily identifiable thing. And because, people are so interested in that, this is a very common request for my company and companies that supply this type of equipment. We get it all the time. So we'll walk through here, why to bring it in-house, and show you some of the highs and lows. A couple of things we're going to discuss. There's a lot of good reasons to do this. We'll discuss that, what we're talking about here, the profitability, the quality, being able to control your lead times, those sorts of things. We'll tell you all the upsides of this too. We'll also discuss a couple things. What we see is there's a couple of major issues that usually take people out of this process. project killers. And so we'll address those too. And that's really experience and cost of these items. So we'll address those further in. So let's get started. Let's go down through this list. First topic, reducing cost. So obviously everyone's always very interested in doing this, increasing profitability. That's one of the two primary reasons we see from people asking, can I bring this in-house? And they realize they're paying a markup. That people that are coding these projects, they have access to the same equipment. They have the ability to code these things themselves. So they realize, depending on how much their contract coders love them, they're paying margin. They're paying 20%, 30%, 40%. That's easy to calculate and identify. Hard numbers, right? The soft numbers, there's a lot of things that metal fabricators need to consider when they're doing these things. And we've sort of listed the primary suspects here. Top of the line, always transfer cost. And these requests, can I bring my powder in-house, always increase right when we're in the environment we are right now. Fuel cost is going up. People going out to contract coders are seeing a hit on their the money's coming right out of their pocket, the increased fuel. So what also needs to be considered is handling. Whenever we're doing this, whenever we're using a contract coder, there's a lot of touching of the product. You're moving it, to package it, to load it, to send it, to come bring it back, to unload it. All the things that you have to do is just, it doesn't have to do with powder coating. It's just chewing up time and money. So it needs to be considered as part of your ROI when you're thinking about this. Also, all that handling and touching, creates additional cost. The more we touch these things, the more we damage them, the more we lose them. We have to keep track of where they're at, their systems and space for that. What we in our business call WIP, work in progress. You have a lot of additional WIP. If you're a just-in-time facility, you've got parts everywhere, and you're either building space or you're renting space. And we know what buildings cost, so $25, $50 per square foot, depending on your location. Maybe you're renting warehouse space at $1, $3 per foot or something. This is just cost, that are attributed to having to have these extra pieces and moving them back and forth. I guess material savings is obvious. You're buying direct now for your powder, and the rework we've kind of already touched on with excessive moving around, damage, lost parts, things like that. So some examples of what this looks like. And this, our top line here is probably a worst case condition. Don't go out and assume that you can cut your cost per part to coat by a tenth. But we had a customer that did do that because of all the inefficiencies of that he was doing. So there are a lot. The point of looking at this is to consider all those soft costs as well as, the obvious cost whenever you're reviewing this. Because the savings, if your system is designed right, can be much more significant than just a markup of what you're paying to have these things coded. Just one example there. The labor used for outsourcing, a lot of people don't consider this, but as we discussed, you're moving and tracking and fixing a lot of parts around your facility. Many people already have the employees in place to start painting, to start powder coating without hiring new people. They'll have to be trained for powder, but it's not an additional cost for you, and you are already paying it to go out to subcontractors. So another example there, what we see is if we have, a good commonality of parts and a good plan to push them through. Again, this is sort of the top estimate, but we've seen people with continuous systems where they're moving a lot of product do ROIs in 6 to 8 months, pay for the system that quickly, and then they're off and running. So again, just another example of a cost there of in-house operation trucks. So I guess another thing to consider about this, remember all the things we're talking about here, there's also a lot of management tied up associated with these people and moving these parts around. So think about that when you're thinking about these things. Now, that's profitability. That's how we, some of the usual suspects that you can look at to increase your profitability, save money inside versus subcontracting your coating. Now, it sort of goes hand in hand with controlling your quality, which is, again, we all know we have to control quality, whether we're making the parts, whether we're coating the parts, whatever we're doing. The quality stuff that we're talking about here is just associated with the movement and using subcontractors. And what I mean by that is what we find out, a typical concern with people that are bringing on board coating is that dealing with subcontractors tends to be, sometimes time consuming and pretty inefficient, and a real lack of control of a lot of aspects of the coating, and that affects quality. What we see is your local subcontractor is not dedicated specifically to you. Usually you have a load and they have a certain amount of resources, and it's pretty inflexible, and then you end up using multiple subcontractors, and that even induces more quality issues. And we'll talk about those moving to the next slide. But this 5% is a number we've developed, and that is not the 5% we're talking about here is just an additional 5% of quality issues made by using multiple subcontractors and moving these parts back and forth. This isn't actually about the coating, the quality of the coating application itself. So what I mean by that, and let me get a drink here. My mouth's dry. So what we mean by that is with multiple let me back up. As I said, a lot of times a single subcontractor can't handle this. And a significant issue that we see is when you start using multiple subcontractors. Now, this isn't linear. This thing goes up sort of exponentially. The problems that you're dealing with deliveries and application of material and things like that. What we mean by that is that when you have multiple contractors, if you're bringing parts back to your house, they have to be the same. They have to be using the same powder. They have to be using the same techniques. They have to be using the same quality control, or you're getting parts that don't match with color, parts that have different cosmetic and corrosion aspects. It just really multiplies quality issues that you have to deal with. So this is a significant issue that we see. Another major reason that we see people want to bring these powder in-house, because the quality gets to be unruly, especially if you want any flexibility at all. So We talked about cost, talked about quality a little bit. Probably the third spoke here. This is probably the second significant reason that we see people bringing this in-house. One, they want to save money. Two, they are at the mercy of their subcontractors, like we were just saying. There are quality issues associated with being at the mercy of your subcontractors, but there are also a lot of delivery issues. And what that means is everyone works a lot of JIT these days, just in time. And what we see is by being held at the mercy of a subcontractor, especially multiple subcontractors, is that we're very inflexible on our schedule. If it takes a certain delivery time to win a product, if one of your great customers is in an emergency situation, it might be hard to push him through the subcontractor, become a priority. I think everyone realizes what the message is here. When you're doing your own coding in-house, you are in control of your destiny as far as getting the best possible results for changing schedules and improving delivery times, doing emergency work, all these types of issues. Okay? So that kind of takes us through the first thing that I was talking about. Why do people talk about bringing these in-house? It's about, saving some money. It's about reducing one aspect of quality, like we discussed. It's about, improving your schedule, your lead times, and things like that. And again, don't ever forget that all the items we're talking about, someone's got to manage these. Whenever you're dealing with a subcontractor or even multiple subcontractors, it can sort of become a habit that it takes a lot of all-day work dealing with these people, calling them, begging for time on the line and things like that. And it really becomes what you think is day-to-day business, and it really doesn't have to be that way. So keep that in the back of your mind. Consider that that's not really what day-to-day business has to be about. And remember that, powder coating is pretty easy. It's when you bring it in-house, it's a pretty forgiving process. So we'll move forward to equipment needed. That sort of closes us out on the business aspects of what people consider and why they want to bring these things in-house. Sorry to keep looking at my watch. I don't have a clock. Trying to stay on our schedule. So you've done all your research. You know how much you're paying per part. You've looked at everything in-house. You think this is a good idea. You want to take this out to the world and figure out how much, what kind of system you need, how much it costs, and is it right for your company. What I can tell you first, what I haven't read there, find an experienced expert you trust. I can't really emphasize this enough. This is, in my opinion, one man's opinion, the most important thing you can do for yourself. I said there were a couple project, or process killers that we see people deal with. One of them is that people lose interest or get overwhelmed by the noise of trying to bring a process into their facility that they don't understand. They don't speak the language. It's just like welding. It's like machining. You're all metal fabricators. It's just another language. It's not complicated. We're not launching shuttles here. Powder, again, is very forgiving. But there is an experience level required. And if you decide to move forward, the most important thing you can do for yourself is to find this experienced expert. Lots of ways to do that. There are consultants you can pay out in the world to do this. There are distributors like I work with all day long. The distributors will help you do this if they're, in the powder discipline. There are a lot of great resources like PCI, who have people that can help you through these processes or recommend people for these processes. And also, you know, if you really made the decision and you're committed, you can just hire the person that's going to run your powder booth. You're going to need that one individual to begin with to spread this knowledge inside your facility, and they can be that experienced expert you trust. So there's lots of avenues there. It's not complicated, and we're trying to put this sort of into an ABC thing for you. So you go through your, should I bring it in? You get there, I'm in. Go meet this person, find this person. And when you do, this person, with your team, with your management team internally, can help you define what you need. And simply what that means is, what are you making? What's it made out of? You know, carbon, steel, aluminum, whatever. And how many of them do you want to make? That's really very key. And we'll talk about that in greater detail. But it's really very key. So you establish what your end users, what your customers need, and what you're going to go for here. And so that's the part you're going to make. And then you establish how you're coating it. You have to determine, you know, what am I making? Does this go indoors in Minnesota? Is this a ladder that goes outdoors and is hanging in the ocean? These are very, very big different things. So you determine what kind of finish you're looking for: cosmetic or corrosion protection, impact UV. Those are the usual suspects. And you define a specification for those. And your experienced person you trust will tell you that if you don't know. If you're making standard general industry items, you're probably aware of corrosion, salt spray test, 600 hours, 2,000 hours, 3,000, things like that. So you need to define that. Then the second very, very important thing you're going to do with your consultants is you're going to go meet a powder supplier. And you're going to tell them, I'm making these parts on this material, and I need these finish requirements. What powder do you have to support this? And tell me the specifications of this. This is a very important step, because they're going, I apologize. Kevin, can you hear me again?
Yes. Yep.
I apologize. For all the viewers, we had a little microphone problem this morning, so I'm working off my phone, and I've got people trying to buzz in. I apologize. So, so where am I? Oh, finding that powder supplier is very, very key. This is a step that probably people miss frequently. They have their facility. They say, I want to do powder coating. And they call someone up and say, how much does a XYZ powder booth size cost? And how much does an XYZ oven cost? I would advise against that a lot. That is the horse before the cart. You should start with your process and pick the appropriate equipment for it. And we'll talk about that some more. So your powder suppliers, somebody gives you the appropriate advice. You trust them, your expert trusts them. You say, I'm going to use this powder. Now you know, with this powder will come instructions how to prep the surface, how to apply the powder, and how to cure the powder. And now you're ready to talk to a equipment supplier, partner with an equipment supplier. So you've done all your research, you know why you're doing this, you have your consultants, you know what powder you need. You're going to go talk to these equipment suppliers. These are the considerations, the typical considerations. Again, we're trying to give you a language to talk about these things and things to talk about with people. And this is pretty high level. but this is where you start. This is where you begin. You know your finish, your substrate. They've defined what powder you're going to use. It's probably going to be epoxy or polyester. I won't go into all the depths of that. That could be a long presentation on its own. And throughput, very, very, very important. Throughput whenever you go talk to these distributors, these equipment suppliers. And because you've defined that, you know what you're asking for surface prep and for powder and for cure. So you know who you're looking for now in a equipment supplier. And to ask them if they're going to supply all this stuff for you and if they understand all these types of items. Okay. Excuse me. So 3 things here. I tried to go, again, high level with these things because I don't want to flood you. You know, I know these presentations are a little like drinking from a fire hose. So the top 3 considerations that we believe you should take very seriously for what we hear from customers that have done this, for what we see, you know, pitfalls that customers make. I said there's a couple job killers. One of them is just losing interest in these projects because of the noise, because of the confusion, because of not taking it a bite at a time, ABC, you know, getting your expert and walking you down the process. That was one. We've sort of been through that. The second one is getting our eyes bigger than our stomach, diving into this and picking way more system than you need. This is a very common, I don't call it a mistake. It's just something that happens. I mean, everyone doesn't do this every day like we do, and we recognize these things. So what happens is, and I'll give you a typical example, is we'll have a metal fabrication shop that is a batch supplier that does a lot of, you know, general industry items. And they're all, pick a size, you know, they're maybe 4x4 by 10 feet long or something. Every now and then, twice in 3 years, some company comes and asks this company to build them a truss for a bridge or something that's 12 foot square and 60 feet long. And they do this once a year, once every 2 years. So what they go out when they start doing ROIs on this and then ask for someone to design them a system, the person asks them, what's the biggest thing you're going to do? They say, we're going to do a 60-foot long beam, and it blows this thing to pieces. The system that is defined is much bigger and much more costly than the fabricator actually needs. Is everyone muted? Are you getting much background noise, Kevin?
Yeah, we were a moment ago there. Everyone's supposed to be muted, but it sounds like it's stopped now.
Okay. I just hope I didn't know if the customers were hearing that. So this is something that your consultant and your equipment supplier can really help you with. If they're being your partner and they're saying, this is what you need to do, you know, if you want to contract one piece out once a year, go do that. But build this appropriate system for the majority of your business. Walk, then run. Again, this is suspect number 2 that kills these projects. You know, a project, I'm going to make up some numbers, that maybe should have cost $100,000, you know, a cleaning booth, a powder booth, and an oven, $200,000. Someone gets a $600,000 quote. And it ends the thing right there. And it ends the thing because of just not defining an appropriate process. Secondly, another primary thing to watch out for on this, with your supplier, that they're doing this appropriately, and the fabricator's doing it appropriately. again, what I had said earlier is we don't want to just say how big is the part and go buy a box that big. Now, what I meant by that was, I'll give you a quick example. I think I'm doing okay on time. Pretend like you're a fabricator who's doing a toolbox. Excuse me. That's maybe, has a 2 foot by 4 foot footprint. It's 4 feet tall, and it needs to be washed. The powder supplier has recommended you wash it clean first, and then you apply powder, and then you cure it. Well, a typical landmine to watch out for is people say, all right, my box has a footprint of 2 by 4. I'm going to go buy an 8 by 8 clean booth, powder booth, oven, and I'm going to get into business. This is what I was saying. You need to think about the part itself, and you need to think about throughput. And what I mean by that is, with the example I've given you, I'm going to assume that you can wash this thing off, clean it in less than 10 minutes. That you can lay the powder down on this in less than 10 minutes. Now, what's going to be a lot of that you're going to hear typically in the powder market is someone's going to say, you need your substrate to be up to 350 degrees, something like that, for 20, 30 minutes to cure your powder. And there's a ramp time associated with that as well, depending on how thick the steel is. So if you can see where I'm going here, you can wash this part, we're calling it 10 minutes. You can coat this part in 10 minutes, but now it's going to take you 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 25 minutes. It's product dependent, powder dependent, but it's going to take you 3 times longer to cure this part than it is to coat it. So what you need to buy is a single space wash, a single space powder coat, and then an oven that you can bank 3 of these in. And now you're keeping up with your process. You don't have a bottleneck. So I don't want to define and design systems over a presentation. I just want to make sure that you keep in the back of your mind that it's about the process and the throughput, not the size of the part versus the size of what we can put one part in. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of information for coming out of your computer, but I hope the generic message is clear to you. We can discuss it later if it's not. Thirdly, this is one man's opinion again, probably not everyone's opinion. I would suggest finding a distributor, a equipment supplier that can supply you everything, and there are a lot of them. They can give you the clean booths, the powder application booths, the cure ovens, and they can give you your powder application equipment as well. The guns, the pumps, totes, all that sort of stuff. If you try to general contract your system, piece parting it out to save a couple bucks, you might be saving nickels and spending dollars unless you have a very experienced, very, very savvy consultant that you're working with. So the commercial equipment that you're going to be working with, typically, if you look below the line, you're going to see powder booth and cure oven. And of course, you're going to need your guns and pumps and things like that. On the simplest of systems, this is going to be the equipment you're looking at, batch style. You're going to wheel it in, wheel it out, wheel it back into the oven. This is when the powder, your powder supplier has said, look, your parts are clean enough. We're not surface pressing them. We're wiping them off. We're getting the stuff off, and we'll go straight to powder. Maybe they're coming off machines. You're manufacturing them right there. They don't have anything that needs to be prepped. So at a minimum, you're looking at powder booths and cure ovens, and the complexity just goes up from there. The third and associated fourth piece of that is going to be if there is actual significant surface preparation that's recommended, which can be anywhere from the simplest of just washing off oils or road grime or something to actually blasting it to some specified term, near white, whatever your powder guy is recommending, or pre-treating even if you have to do conversion, maybe you're trying to do some significant corrosion protection, things like that. So whenever you're talking about equipment needed for powder booth, at the simplest level, you're going to need powder booths and cure ovens and your application equipment. You may need to get more complex into surface preparation, and if it's wet, you're going to have to dry that surface preparation before it goes to a powder oven. Again, can't recommend enough. Find a good supplier. There's many of them out there. I won't turn this into a commercial for my company, but we do it. We do it all day long. So I think I'm reaching the end of what we wanted to discuss. So let me, with this slide, this is as far as I was going to go. Let me wrap up a couple things here. I hope this has been helpful for you. Presentations like this can either take 20 minutes or 2 days, right? It's hard to know where to stop but get you enough. So I hope you're getting something out of it. I will ask you to take this away from it. I'll offer that maybe this will help you. Don't be discouraged. Don't get caught up in the noise. Find that person that can filter that for you. Again, if you're thinking about bringing something in-house, powder is about as forgiving a process as you're ever going to bring into your house. It's just not that complicated. There are rules, there's experience, but they're on the scale of, by comparison, of coating metallic matching colors or something, or exotic welding, or exotic material fabrication machines. Powder is very forgiving, very lenient with you. Again, don't go big. This equipment's not so expensive that you really need to think, I don't ever want to expand. You can make it scalable, or you can buy a bigger system in the future. This, again, is not the most expensive equipment that people are ever going to buy in a metal fabrication shop. So keep your size right. Figure out what your ROI is, where you're trying to get piece per part, and size the throughput of this system appropriately, and keep the scale of your equipment size correct. Again, find that partner. It's as important as you can get. Find that powder supplier you trust, and then, ABC, your partner, your powder guy that's defining your process, then your equipment supplier. Make your decision. Should you bring it in-house? We would recommend it. It's not hard. You will put more money in your pocket. You will much more control your scheduling. Many upsides to being a self-coder in the powder industry. Kevin, that is what I had. I hope it's what you expected. I know this is a new presentation for us. It's a rollout, so I hope we're getting there.
Yep. No, very good. I'll ask everybody now, if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them in the question box, and we can run through them. I do have one question that was asked, and maybe you can expand a little bit on here. So Max is asking, how can I build more efficient processes than a professional custom coder? He is very good and improved equipment and experienced team. I'll be a novice instead and will make my own mistakes. Any advice for him?
Well, if he's very good, your goal is going to be as good as him. I mean, there are a lot of great custom coders out there, and if you can afford to use them, they're great resources to have. Your savings are not going to be as significant when you bring it in-house, but there are a lot of savings to make. The space required, the tracking we were talking about, the moving back and forth of parts. So what I would say again, Max, is this all tribal knowledge, I know, is a little bit of a worn out term in business meetings, but a lot of this sort of is. Max, if you're a fabricator, you know how welding is. You can't go by a welder and buy a weld machine and buy experience. You need a welder to run that machine, the best machine you can buy, and you'll have the best weld you can get. This powder equipment's very much like that. You need that consultant, that team. You need that consultant that is leading you down the right process. You need then again defining the correct powder supplier that you develop a relationship with and trust. And then that distributor is going to be very key as well, the correct equipment. And that team, whether some of those people are the same or not, is the people that can take you to being as efficient coder as the one you're using outsourcing. I hope that helps.
Yep. What question from Craig is, what inspection equipment will I need?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. Most of the inspection equipment that we see is usually mill thickness. We work a lot in the general industry where a lot of this stuff is not so much cosmetic as it is protective. So what you're probably going to have to get some tools and some training that will be able to measure that you are applying the correct tolerance thickness of powder that the powder company recommended you lay down for whatever finish you're looking for. So you're going to need to be able to measure the thickness of that powder. And then also you might need some corrosion or adhesion or impact testing equipment as well to see, what kind of shot your coating can take, to see how long it will last in certain environments. There's salt spray test, things like that, and how well the powder is adhering to the part.
I probably would also recommend a meg ohm meter just to make sure you have a proper ground on your hangers and that.
Very true.
For a new unexperienced coder bringing it in-house, what tools, resources, or training would you recommend to help management all the way down to the operator?
I would begin with companies just like PCI, who is hosting this event. There are good companies, PCI being one of the best, that create training just for what you're asking for. And they even describe them in the traditional terms, a 101, a 201, etc. And I would suggest very much getting the curriculums from someone like a PCI and finding out which ones are appropriate for your employees, which step of the process they're in, and getting them in that training. And I will tell you something, this in the past has been, there's always been training. I've been skeptical of it. It is improving so much. Companies like PCI partner with people like us and are investing so much money in doing real training that is available to you, not an hour-long commercial to buy a powder gun, actual real training, because we're seeing such a void in the availability of this training in the market, and bringing new employees into these facilities and getting them up to speed. And companies like PCI just very recently in the last couple of years have made such great strides in creating the exact training you're talking about.
James has asked, can you discuss the importance of rack cleaning and the best practices for rack cleaning?
Yeah, I guess I didn't go there. I was trying to, once I get going, James, we could be here a long, long time. But it is very important, as Kevin just mentioned. Powder is an electrostatic process, powder coating, which means we need a good ground on the part, this metal part, which means the rack that you're hanging it on needs to be clean so that when we hang, we get good contact, metal to metal, and that we're grounded. So what happens is your racks, after coating over and over again, you get powder coated, and you don't get aground anymore, and your transfer efficiency of your powder gets terrible, and you're even leaving voids behind the part or someplace that would have attracted powder when it was grounded appropriately. So the typical way to do this is with a batch burn-off oven, which is, more equipment that my company or multiple companies sell. There are other ways to do this, chemical reduction or mechanical reduction. They get more complicated and more maintenance intensive. The one man's opinion, the industry standard is to burn these off as long as you have a good maintenance program with your racks. The downfall, the pitfall that you need to watch out for in your racks is that you don't let them get so coated, the coating gets so thick that it becomes a real headache for you to clean them. If you keep them cleaned on a regular, maintained basis, the burn-off ovens will do a fantastic job for you, and you'll always get a good ground.
And I also mentioned that if you don't want to purchase the burn-off equipment, there are suppliers that you can send it to and do a rotating basis
Absolutely.
with also. Yeah.
Yep, there are contractors just like the coaters.
Yep. Craig has asked, can I use the cure oven to dry off products after wet pretreatments versus a dry off oven?
You can. It just, again, it depends on throughput. What you do is you create a bottleneck. You're using one device, one booth for two processes. If you're a very custom builder and you have a very low volume, it's probably not a bad idea. If you want to do any volume at all, you're probably going to need two ovens. There are some downsides to it. Keeping your processes separated is always a good idea if you can afford the capital cost. There are many, many quality things that you chase whenever you're coating products, and reducing variabilities on them will always help you in defining when you're having a rework issue. And one of the quality issues, the variables that you have to always consider is cross-contamination. And if you start using same areas for multiple processes, you can start getting cross-contamination. So I would be aware of that. Yes, it is possible. It just depends on cross-contamination, if it's going to be an issue, and what throughput you're looking for.
One last question, and I'll probably start it off to answer it, and then if you want to jump in, Mark, what makes powder more forgiving than liquid? And again, the issue really with powder coating is it is a greener product, no VOCs, it's very durable, and again, with the availability of different types of powder can achieve, if it's indoor, if it's outdoor, there's a lot of different things that have it. From a forgiving standpoint, you actually need to have a very clean product. The surface has to be cleaned and pre-treated to get the results that you're looking for. Whereas if you're using a high VOC liquid coating, it can tend to cut through some grease and grime if you don't get a good cleaning to it. But there are, I believe, many more upsides to the powder coating than liquid. And the number one being the durability and the environmental issues. You got anything else, Mark?
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's why people go to it. If powder gives you the cosmetic and durability properties that you're looking for, it's a very good thing to bring in-house. And something I probably should have brought up, Kevin, this is a work in progress, right? Is the green aspect that you just mentioned. Powder is a very green aspect or a very green product, and everything that we're going to these days, it used to be a little bit of a buzzword, but now it seems more of an industry standard. It's a very green product. You are not releasing VOCs, volatile organic compounds, into the atmosphere. You don't even need permits from the EPA. And operationally, versus paint, there are operational savings because you're not exhausting all your process air. You can filter that and put that back into your facility. So I would mention those things as well.
All right. Mark, you got a closing slide there with your contact information on it at all that you can show on the screen?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Well,
I thought we were supposed to leave those off. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, that's fine. Let's do this. If anybody has any questions, you can reach me. It's kevin@powdercoating.org, and I will be more than happy to pass along to Mark and get any additional questions answered.
Yeah, feel free to contact me.
Yep. With that, Mark, thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar. Just a reminder to watch for the link to the survey and take a few moments to give us your feedback. And a reminder that in about 2 days, so probably Monday, this will be posted on the PCI website in the store. It's free of charge, but it's the best way we can distribute it. So you can just find it there and share it with anybody that wants to learn a little bit about bringing powder in-house. So again, thank you all. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for participating.